So I went with straight stitch in zigzag, and then I pressed seam allowance to any side. It doesn't matter which side you pressed. Now I take my blouse and I have to attach this to my armhole here. I hope it's visible. And now it's important to understand what sleeve goes to which armhole, because they're not the same, and that's why we have marks here. Do you remember we did them? So this mark here, and we also have one on my sleeve, they have to match. If they match, it means that this sleeve is correct. So what I have to do, I turn the sleeve inside out, so right side is now visible. And as always, I connect beautiful side to beautiful side, and this is also side seam of my sleeve and side seam of my blouse here. So I have to connect these side seams together, beautiful side to beautiful. So I go from the inside of my blouse, this is inside of my blouse, I connect these side seams. So side seams are together, and now I look if my marks are matching. So I have mark here, but here I don't have any mark. My mark now on another side. You see, it means that this sleeve is not for this side. This sleeve goes to another side. Let's try here. Again, beautiful side to beautiful side. So I go from the inside. Side seams have to go together. Now I already know that this is correct sleeve, so I can pin this. And now I check if my marks are matching. Yes, they're matching. So this one here and this one is here. So I pin this place too. But I ask you don't do this now yet, because I want to show you something. So if I'm gonna attach it around, so I just make sure that edges are matching, and I'm attaching it around. You're gonna see something wrong, because your sleeve will be a bit bigger than your armhole. So if I attach it like this, I have more fabric on my sleeve than on my armhole. So this is not mistake, this is correct, this is how it's supposed to be. Because we have to move our hand all the time and our arm, we need more space. That's why we need more fabric on the sleeve. So what we have to do, we have to gather this top part a little bit and make it smaller, so it fits to my smaller armhole. This is the idea, and this is what you almost always have to do with the sleeve. Okay, sometimes where the shape is very simple, they don't do this, they don't tell you to get together the top of your sleeve, but most of the time you have to do this. Okay, now do you remember we had like marks that with chalk? It's maybe not that visible, but one is here and the other one is here. So these are the marks where we have to gather our sleeve. So we don't have to make full circle, only the top part, okay? So you have to gather it from here, like this, till this mark. If you don't have any marks on your pattern, how to understand where these dots are? What you have to do, we turn it inside out, so the wrong side is visible. And we need it flat like this. So stitches here. What I do next, I take this part where I have seam allowance and I connect it with this edge, so it's flat. The sleeve is flat, and the place where I have lines crossing, so this line and this line, I mark these places. So this one and this one. Okay, so flat first, everything is flat. Then I take this and I cross it like this, and where this line and this line crossing, I mark. So this will be my marks. It's approximately the same how they tell you to do this. It doesn't have to be super exact, because if the difference is 1 centimeter, it's not a problem at all. So if you don't have any marks on your sleeve, you can do it yourself. And now, do you remember how we did the gathering? We need to switch to the longest straight stitch, like 4 millimeter long, and we go with 2 straight stitches around one, and next one with distance 3 millimeters approximately, without back stitch. And then we pull for 2 threads and we gather it. So I'm gonna do it with you together, so you know all the steps. Okay, I already switched to the longest straight stitch that I have, and now I have to go from this mark at the edge till this mark. Seam allowance is 1 centimeter, and all these two stitches, they have to be in this 1 centimeter distance. So first I go closer to the edge. With my machine, for example, I concentrate on this line, the line between the transparent and silver side. So I make sure this line is together with the edge. It's about 5 millimeters. So no back stitch, just straight stitch. And the last one, and everything goes up, and I leave the thread around 10 centimeters. I hope it's visible, so I don't cut it really short, okay? And now I go second time next to this old stitch. So now I make sure that the edge of fabric goes together with right side of my foot. Distance will be like 3 millimeters. And I make sure it's flat, only one layer. Okay. You can do now the same with second sleeve. So you prepare everything, and I will show you what to do next. So I went with 2 stitches here without back stitch, and now again we repeat the same steps. I turn it inside out so right side is visible, and we connect beautiful side to beautiful side. That side seam here and side seam here are matching. So I go from the inside of my blouse like this, and I make sure this match, and I check if my cuts are on the same side. Here I see that my cuts are not on the same side. Okay, it means that I have to go to this armhole, and I repeat the same. I pin the side seam and I connect the cuts. They have to be together, and I pin these 2. Next, what we have to do, we have the cut on the top of my sleeve. This cut has to match with shoulder seam. This is shoulder seam next to the neckline, right? So this cut goes to the shoulder seam, and we pin it. Okay, next what we do, before the beginning of the threads, before this mark and the threads, we just pin the sleeve how it goes. Just make sure the fabric, the edges are together. We don't have to do anything extra, just pin it till the mark. This side, and the same with this side. So this is my mark, and before this mark I just pin everything normal. Okay, good. And now from this mark till this mark I have to gather my sleeve. So you can see now it's bigger. So what I do, we already did it, I take 2 threads. They have to be from the same side. It can be from the right or wrong side, it doesn't matter, but the same side, and I pull for this thread, and this part of my sleeve has to become smaller, the same as my armhole here. So maybe you need to gather a little bit, like here. So now it's matching. Yes, it's good. So just spread this gather everywhere equally, and if it's equal, just pin it matching the edges. And we do the same with another side. So this side, again, I take 2 threads from the same side, from the side that is closer to me to the wrong side. Okay, I have 1, and this is the second one, and I pull for this and gather my sleeve. Don't gather a lot because we need to do a little bit. So now it's kind of matching, right? It's more or less equal, I think. And I pin this too. Okay, so we attached the sleeve to the armhole. Next, what we have to do, we have to go with straight stitch and connect it with sewing machine. But what is important, we have these 2 stitches, and we have to go with the normal stitch now, not with the long one, but with standard one, a bit inside from these 2. So you have to go like more on the sleeve side than on the seam allowance. So these 2, and you go like 2 millimeters inside. Why we do this? We don't want this to be visible from this right side. If you go too close, these stitches will be visible here. We don't want this. Okay? So you go a bit deeper inside, 2 millimeters inside. Okay. No, don't forget to switch to the standard stitch, not long one, and we have to make a circle. It's a bit difficult, but actually the sleeves are the most difficult part for students. You can start from any point because it's a circle. Let's start from here. Everything goes down. Actually, if you did it the same how I did, and now we have this line with distance like 5 millimeters, this line with 8, and if we make sure it's 1 centimeter seam allowance, everything will be on the right side. So as always, I just make sure that I have here like 2 extra millimeters, and my seam allowance will be 1 centimeter in this case. So what is tricky here, because the shape is not straight, it's a circle, you need to turn all the time. And it's a bit difficult because fabric begins to fold under this, and you can have folds attached with stitch, which is not good. So what I do, I go with piece by piece. So I go like 5 centimeters, I stop, and then I check everything's okay. I spread the fabric, and then I continue. I'm gonna show you. So now, before I start, I check that nothing is folded, everything is flat, and I make back stitch. And now I go forward. So you see, I turn a little bit. Now I see that it's a new piece, and again I have to check that it's flat, and I go forward. Again I turn and I check that no threads on the way, fabric is flat, and I continue. And you make a full circle like this. Okay. Okay, no threads on the way. Remove them. And I finish. I try to get in the same stitch, previous stitch. And back stitch. And now we remove the pins, we cut the threads, the long ones, we don't need them anymore, and we go with zigzag around. If you have some folds from the visible side, just open the stitch in this piece and go again with straight stitch. It's not hard to fix it. This is how my sleeve looks at the end. So I have a bit of gather here, it's normal, this is how it has to be, but only on the top part. Here everything is flat. Because sleeves are the most difficult part, I'm gonna show you the same with another sleeve, okay? So I take my second sleeve, I already have 2 stitches without back stitch, and I turn it inside out. And I connect my sleeve beautiful side to beautiful side of my blouse. So beautiful side is visible now. So side seam here and side seam here are connected like this. I already know that this sleeve is correct because we attached the first one already. So it is, this one is for sure correct. And I pin this. Now I check that my marks are on the same side, and I pin this place. Okay, now it's easier if I turn the blouse inside out, it will be easier. Next, what I do, the cut on my top of my shoulder, top of my sleeve, goes to the shoulder seam. So my neckline is here, this is my neckline, and this will be shoulder. So this cut I connect with my shoulder seam and pin it. So we make sure the cuts are connected and seams are connected, okay? Next, what I do, before these marks and before we have stitches, we pin everything flat, just how it goes, without anything extra. Just make sure the edges are matching. I pin it till my mark. The same with second side. Just pin it till here, normal. Now the top part I have to gather, so I take 2 threads from the same side. So one from the top and another one from the top. These 2 I don't need, and I take them, 2 of them, and I put them together, and I move this gather, I spread it around so it's equal more or less, and I check if now this is equal. I think so. And now I make sure edges are matching, and I connect it with pins so it doesn't move. The same with this side, 2 threads from the same side, top, I pull and gather this part of my sleeve. For example, now it became too small, so you can just spread it and make it longer, and again I pin it so my edges are matching. And now go with straight stitch a little bit inside from these 2, so like 2 millimeters from this previous stitch. If you for some reason want a bit, not that, like if these 2 stitches are visible on the right side, it can happen. What you can do, just remove this long stitch, we don't need it anymore. Let me show you. So these are 2 my long stitches that we had. For now we don't need it because we already connected the sleeve, so you can basically remove it. It's really easy to remove because it's a long stitch, so just can pull it out really easy, like this one, if it's visible. If it's not visible, then you don't have to do this. And I pull this out, second one, but from the right side it's still the same because we already connected armhole and the sleeve. Okay, so now I have to go with straight stitch, not long one but standard one, and make a circle. I attached my second sleeve, but here I have this fold I told you about. So when you don't spread your fabric good enough, you can have these folds, which is not beautiful. We have to fix it. So what I do, I go from the inside, this is my fold, and I open the stitch here and around like 1-2 centimeters both sides. We have to remove the stitch. Maybe it's easier from this side. Okay, and now we have to spread this part and went with straight stitch again. Make sure I have to make sure that the fabric is not folded. And we start earlier, like 1 centimeter before the end, back stitch, straight, and back stitch again. So I closed this part and I went with zigzag, and this is how my sleeve looks now. No folds here. We also don't press anything with iron, so we just leave the sleeve like that.